This July, Family Fest Barbados invites you to be part of something powerful. It is our month of activities in July 2026 under the theme, The Purpose of Family. Across 4 dynamic weeks, we will focus on the heart of our nation, men, women, children, and the family. Join us for 12 live online discussions, exploring real issues, real stories, and real solutions for stronger families and a stronger Barbados. Men's Week runs July 5th to 9th. Women's Week runs July 12th to 16th. Children's Week runs July 19th to 23rd. And Family Week runs July 26th to 30th. Stream with us live on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Then join us for our 7th anniversary fundraising gala, Saturday, September 5th, 2026 at 7 p.m. at the Hilton Barbados Resort. Enjoy a 3-course meal, entertainment, door prizes, and more. Tickets are $250 per person. Your support helps us to save families. Family Fest Barbados. Help, hope, healing, happiness.
For tickets and information, call 428-9611, 420-5717, or 832-5241. Family Fest Barbados. Saving families through education.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around.
And a wonderful good evening to you. Welcome. It is time for another Family Fest discussion. And tonight we continue the conversation in Women's Week. We are going to be engaging with a very interesting topic. We discussed about recovering motherhood and understanding purpose versus roles. Then we also discussed how we looked at our we looked at women as the model and the standard which we should look at. And now we're going to be looking at some success stories. Some of the times that some of the people who have been able to make this real, make motherhood count, and accomplish what God would have them to do. And this evening, we're going to be joined by Lisa Martin. She is a pastor, and Cornelius Bartlett. He is a people's advocate, and we're going to be having an interesting discussion this evening. And call your friends, call your family, and let them know they can tune in and be a part of what we're doing here with Family Fest this evening. Tonight's discussion, we focus on those success stories of women within the home and the family, and we want to highlight the positive impact women have made in strengthening families, nurturing relationships, and creating supportive home environments. Throughout this discussion, we are going to hear inspiring stories of women whose dedication, leadership, sacrifice, and love have made a meaningful difference in the lives of their families. And by sharing these experiences, we hope to recognize and honor the invaluable contributions of women in the home. And through these stories, we want you to be inspired, uplifted, and affirmed in the important role women play in building strong families and healthy homes, and inspired to find those around you that you think have been successful in doing the same. I want to say good evening and welcome to our panelists. Good evening, Lisa. Good evening, Cornelius.
Evening.
And I am
Good
Graham
evening.
Vaughn. Let's get right into it. Now, success stories is something I think that Family Fest should be lauded for focusing on. We always hear about what is wrong. We always hear about what needs to be changed, what needs to be fixed. But it's good every now and then to recognize that some people have made it work. Some people have accomplished what they set out to do. So let's start with a broad look at success in the context of family life. What does a successful motherhood look like? And do we have any, not just to you, but we have a standard by which we can say, hey, anytime you see this or that, we know that this is a successful mother.
Ladies first, so
Lisa,
I will go after the lady, the rose.
ladies first. Lisa,
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on Family Fest today. I feel very honored to be here, and may God continue to bless you. Now, to me, success is relative to each individual family, because what I might see as success in my family, another mother may not see that as success. But for me, success is seeing my children healthy, having an understanding of who God is, being respectable, whether it's within the home environment or outside of the home environment, and just having a family that loves each other, that appreciates one another, that respects each other. That is my success as a mother.
okay.
Okay.
Cornelius, you aren't a mother, but I'm sure you've observed some mothers that you think have done it well.
Well, I had a mother, and believe it or not, I was actually birthed from a mother, believe it or not.
Okay,
But
I'll
here,
take your word for it.
so here's what I would say though. First of all, and I love this question. Um, so success has to start first of all with understanding purpose. Cannot escape it. So if you have a car and your car is to be driven and carrying around passengers and it is not driving, then the car is not successful. So when I think of women, and we're talking women today, I mean, we can say something about men, but we're not. We're talking women today. When I think of women and I think of success, I think of women understanding their purpose. And that purpose has to do with, if she has a husband only and no children, has to do with her responsibility to her husband to be the helpmeet. And not that word helpmeet. In other words, if I need a helpmeet, it means that I cannot get where I need to get without that helper that helps me to meet that objective or purpose that I have. So I think that women are extremely amazing creations of God. And I don't think, honestly, that we can discuss women alone without recognizing that women being successful has to do with their recognition of who they are and helping a man to be successful, one, and two, helping the family, which includes the children when children are involved, to be successful. So women that are successful are developing not only good relationships with their husbands, but they're also encouraging good relationship between the father and children as well. But we'll get more into that as we go on. But if you understand the line I'm going, I'm talking about looking at purpose first, and her fulfilling her role within that wider purpose determines her success or failure.
I think you jumped onto some very, very good metrics there in terms of relationships because yes, we do talk about relationships between mother and child and mother and father, wife and husband. But in terms of motherhood being successful, I would like to posit that I think a successful mother has produced children who are capable of maintaining strong and healthy relationships in any sphere of life. That being in their own families, in the family which they came from, in their own families as they branch out, and then within the wider society, work relationships, a strong citizen. And I think that that is, we can say that's a metric that we can posit as a good mother and a successful mother. Now,
But
I'm going
if
to
I could
ask you
interject,
all, sure, go
sorry,
ahead.
Graham, if I could interject, because what I'm
Feel free
hearing
to.
is
I wanted to get here too, but I was, go ahead.
what I'm hearing is that okay, if the children comes up and there are good citizens, then we can say that the mother's role was she had accomplished the purpose or whatever that may be. However, I would beg to differ there in some instances. Why I say that? I have teenage children, and I don't know if I should say fortunately or unfortunately. As mothers, we carry the burden for our children. And when our children succeed, we are happy, we rejoice, we tell everybody about the success stories of how good our children are doing, and we feel good as parents. However, many of us, if not 50% or even higher percentage, to me, this is my opinion, when our children are not functioning in the way that society believes that they should function, then we take on that burden as well. And we see ourselves as bad parents. And my children, they're good, thank God, they're good children, but there are times that they do nonsense. And there may be one or two times I got a call from school saying, your son isn't being the best student today. And, I got to deal with some things. And immediately that burden of, oh, what is it that I didn't do? Or, did I do enough? And I'm burdened, and that burden comes upon me. But I was sitting in the company of a lady that I really love, highly respected in this nation. And she said to me, and I mean, it really helped me. She said, many times we take on the burden of our children, and when they mess up, we blame ourselves. But she said what helped her was when she had a conversation with her son, who is an adult. And he said, Mom, why is it that you beat yourself down when we do dumb things? When we make those decisions, it is our choice. And so you can have brought us up in the best way possible, guiding us in the way of the Lord. But at the end of the day, we are the ones that make certain decisions. So why is it that you take that responsibility on yourself and immediately begin to discount yourself and pull yourself down and wonder where you went wrong? And I think that a lot of parents carry that guilt, carry that, especially mothers, I may say, carry that burden for their children that really they can't carry, they shouldn't carry. Because at the end of the day, we're not God. And if we look at our lives and we see the times that we messed up, even though we were walking for Christ, the times that we got it wrong, the times that we sinned, but yet God loved us, yet God accepted us. So I believe that as mothers, we should be a little bit more compassionate with ourselves. Those who are can identify with me and recognize that the most we can do many times is to give our children to God when we believe that we have brought them up to the best of our ability, to the best of the ways that the Bible speaks about that we should, train up a child and not take on that burden and that guilt and that responsibility.
Okay, the only thing I wanted to really say, thank you, Lisa, very well presented, but I wanted to just say that, Granny, we spoke about it earlier about that women produce, I think that's the word you use, produce good children. And I just want to drop in here that children do not just appear as adults, they grow up from birth. And I want to say that whether we like it or not, we are all generally products of our environment. And we're talking success stories of women. And I would want to leave on the table that the very significant role that women were called to play as helpmeets and as mothers. Before we leave here today, it must be highlighted that that is a very important, a very serious role. And it has a purpose, and that purpose is connected and tied very heavily to what God has mandated for women. And I just want to leave that there for now.
Well, thank you, Cornelius, and thank you, Lisa, as well. That was well answered, and I smiled because, well, you fell into my trap, quote unquote, because I ended our conversation on Tuesday by reminding everybody that God is the best parent that there ever could be, and He somehow managed to misplace a whole race of children. So because of their own decisions. So everything you said is absolutely correct, and we need to understand that being a successful mother is not completely contingent on the children that we produce. Because I will say, or at least the activities and the behaviors that you note, because I know of situations where praying mothers, strong praying mothers, had some children who were very, very wayward, yet after she did not even live to see that her children returned to where uh, she had taught them and came back to the Lord, or came back to a lifestyle that was more along what she would have been praying they would have had. And so plant the seeds, mothers. You are doing well as long as you plant those seeds. We're also joined this evening by Minister Michelle King. I want to give her a chance to uh, greet you and to jump in on the question that we asked earlier, which was, um, what do you see as metrics that you can look at and say, here are, mothers who have been successful? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn, and thank you to Brother Cornelius for this invitation to be here this evening. It is a pleasure to be back on the program. I just jumped in. It was having some technical difficulty, but I'm happy, so happy to be here. In today's society, it is so difficult to determine what a successful parent is, what a successful mom is, because we are going by the metrics of, as you quite rightly called it, of what society brings to the table. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. I like to, as a minister of the gospel, as a Christian woman, I like to refer to the word of God, because that is our greatest measuring tool, and that is what we ought to go by. And I like the Bible verse that says to train up a child in the way that it should go, and when it is old, it shall not depart. The issue with that is that we don't want, we like the first part of that verse where we are encouraged to train up a child in the way it should go, but we don't want anything to happen between there so that we have to wait until it's old when he or she comes back. We want to see all of the success while we are alive and while they are growing. And, we want them to be perfect children. But we are not perfect people. And when we were growing up, we had our issues, we had our challenges. And so we should expect that our children would have challenges as well, somewhere along the line. We don't want that, but it happens because they are human beings as we were human beings. Of course, we also parent from, sometimes we parent with our fears. We parent with challenges that we've had. So, for example, a mother might have had a difficult childhood or difficult teenage years, and because she doesn't want the same things to happen to her sons or her daughter, she goes over the extreme. She goes over on the other side where she is too overprotective or over this or over that. So I think one of the first things that we have to do is give parents some grace, knowing that they are not perfect people. We have to give ourselves some grace because we do not parent from a place of perfection. We parent from a place of humanity, right? And we have also always to refer to the Word of God in terms of how we parent our children. And as I said, the greatest tool for us is the Word of God, where it says to train them up. And that is the most that we can do. Train our children up in the admonition and fear of the Lord. And that is not just to say it, but to live it, to do what God wants us to do in the home, to be good examples of Christ, to be Christ-like, to be the women that God has called us to be. And that is the best thing that we can do for our children. I am a mom to three daughters, three adult daughters, 26, 22, and 21 years old. And my journey has been, it's not been a difficult one as a mom, but the challenge came with parenting three different children with three different personalities, and having to maneuver and being able to function with all three of them. They have different limitations, they have different capacity to understand certain things. They are different children. So as a mom, I have to be able to have capacity for all three of them. And all the while, I have to balance my emotions as well. I have to balance my reactions to their challenges. So it is not an easy thing to do sometimes. The most challenging thing as a parent, a mom to adult children, is the art, I would call it the art of letting them go. And that is not an easy thing to do because mothers are very much attached to their children, boy or girl. It doesn't matter. We are emotional beings. Dads are as well, but moms are very emotional. And because of the nurturing factor that we possess, which is innate because God has placed that in us, we find it a bit difficult to separate our emotions and so on from our parenting, and that in itself can be very, very dangerous. But the critical thing in parenting children is the ability to not get our emotions so much involved, but to parent them and give them some grace as well, because that is very important. And when you give your children grace, you realize that they are human, you realize that they will make mistakes, and that their lives are not over when they make a mistake. We have to put ourselves in a position where we understand our children, we understand what they're going through. We must not parent with anger. We must not parent from a position where we are accusing them. We must remember to parent from a place of love, kindness, and understanding. And one of the things that we sometimes persons forget to do is to apply the gifts of the Spirit to parenting. And if we say we are Christians, we must maintain the gifts of the Spirit in our parenting. So we must apply faith, knowing that they will be the men and women of God that He's called them to be. We must be kind to them. We must be gentle. We must be forgiving and understanding. We must have temperance and long suffering. That is critically important. We must have faith, as I said. We must be gentle with them. We must have joy in our parenting. And those things make a great difference. So one of the measuring the matrix, the things that we can do to measure is the fruit of the spirit. We must parent with the fruit of the spirit, and we must expect good results because one of the fruit of the spirit is faith. So we must parent with faith, knowing and being confident that God has our children in His hands, that He loved them long before we did, that He loves them more than we ever could, and that He is in charge. And sometimes, as I said, our children might not be perfect because nobody is perfect, but we have faith and we believe that once we put our children in God's hands and we train them up in the way that God has said we ought to, that they will not stray from Him. And even if they do, they will come right back to the fold. So my greatest measuring tool is the Word of God, as I said before, and that is to train up these children in the admonition and fear of the Lord. And in doing so, I
Mhm.
believe that it should be done in a way where we lead by example. And that's the best thing that we can do as moms, while giving grace to ourselves and while giving grace to our children. They need grace,
Well,
especially in these trying times.
by the same metric that you gave, I'm going to throw this now back to Lisa and then come back to Michelle and then to Cornelius. But by the same metric you gave, can we then look around and see someone who we can say that is a successful mother? And if you can, if any of the three of you can, I would like you to share a story about that person and what made you realize this person is on the ball when it comes to their motherhood, their expression of God's role in motherhood and His purpose for motherhood. Lisa?
I'm sure that there are many people who have been very successful, but I may say also by trial and error, because our minister Michelle, she spoke about, you know, the measuring, uh, the measures that we should have or we can put in place. And, she mentioned about the fruits of the spirit. And I sat here and I listened to her and I was like, oh man, I wish that I had all of that in during my times of parenting. But what I've found is that parenting is one aspect and one area in our lives that it it's by trial and error. We can't ever say we have gotten it right or we get it, because it's a work in progress. And every day you learn, every day, I believe that you take from a page from somebody's book. And your question, to answer your question, I would say yes. My pastor's wife, I have seen success in her in the raising of their children. All three of them, they're boys, and all three are married. And I know that they never spared the rod. But I always look to how they loved all three of their boys. There was no preferential treatment towards one and not the next, but all of them got the same love. All of them got the same discipline, and they all came up and they really love their parents. They respect their parents to the fullest. All three of them, they're married, they're settled, they have their children, they're all three still in church. So I would say definitely I have seen what I perceive as a successful mother parenting her children. You're muted, Ray.
Okay, Michelle, what about you?
Hi. I have I'd met a lady a few years ago, and she has been so remarkable, and she has been so instrumental in my life. She is the wife of Reverend Dr. Paul Watson. Her name is Usha Watson, and she was just a wonderful, wonderful woman. Unfortunately, she has passed and she has gone on to be with the Lord, and we will be saying goodbye to her tomorrow. In another forum, I spoke of her. We got an opportunity last Sunday gone rather, to pay our respects to her, the persons who were closest to her. And I, I was so torn. I was so torn because this woman led by example. She led by example. Was not allowed. She was not, all out there. She had a very quiet and gentle spirit, but she was a very firm woman of faith. And she raised three sons. She was a grandmother, and she was wife to Reverend Dr. Paul Watson. And they were married for 50, they just celebrated 50 years of marriage. And they were absolutely phenomenal. She was absolutely awesome. And she quietly influenced so many people, so many people. She quietly, through her life, as I said, she was not loud. She was a very gentle soul. And one of the things that I loved about her is that she always gave grace. She was very kind, she was very understanding, and she was very gracious to persons who have not yet come to a place of the fullness of their Christianity. She was never one to accuse. She was always one to understand. You can take any issue with her to her concerning your children, and she was one to understand, and she was also a woman of deep prayer and intercession. I would say that she was a very successful parent. By that note, though, I don't want us to think that because a mother doesn't have a story like that, a mother doesn't have the proof to say that, oh, she's been successful because she's raised these children, and they're perfect children. I don't want moms who don't have that story to think that they are not successful, because the most that we can do, as I said earlier, as a mom, is to teach our children the right way. But you see, we are results oriented people. We like to see evidence. We like to say, well, oh, she's a good mom because of this, or she's a good mom because of that. But being a good mom is just doing what you are asked to do, what you're commissioned to do in the word. And the response that we get from our children, really, I don't think, in all circumstances, it doesn't always reflect the job that we do. Sometimes moms do the best that they can, and still the children, they have their own choices to make. So I don't want anyone on the call, anyone hearing us, to think that because you don't have a son or a daughter that is out there serving the Lord and is a pastor, or, I don't want people to think that because you don't have that story, that you are not a good mom. Being a good mom is being what God has called you to be, being a woman of God, and sticking by God's standards and teaching your children, regardless of their response. You are a good mom because you have done what God has called you to do. And He's promised that once you do that, He is going to bring them in. And that's what we have to hold on to. But to answer your question, Brother Vaughn, it's Minister Usha Watson. As I said, she is the wife of Reverend Dr. Paul Watson, and she is simply exemplary in every way. And I am thankful that I have been given the opportunity to know her, and I am thankful that I was led and graced by her ministry. And tomorrow we will say our final goodbyes to her.
Well, definitely. On behalf of Family Fest, I would like to extend our condolences to the Watson family and all those who loved and knew her. Cornelius, on to you. Is there
Yes.
anybody you would have identified as being successful, and by what standard?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to change title a little bit here because so far we've been talking about people that are Christians, people that know the Lord, and I want to take it to my own childhood, and I want to take it to my mother, and I want to say that I consider my mother as extremely successful. She wasn't perfect, like none of us are perfect, but she was extremely successful. And hear this. At the time, my mother was not a believer. She ended up in her latter years becoming a believer, but she was not a believer. And she and my dad broke up. I was only about 2 or 3 years old at the time, right? And now that I'm a man, I have my own family. I really, because back then I did not see her as being successful or unsuccessful. I just didn't think about it. But now that I'm mature and I'm thinking about what a successful mother and a successful woman looks like, I don't think any woman comes close to my mother in that regard. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna give you a very specific example why. And this is only one dimension of the success that women can measure themselves by. We talk about women relating to children, but we have not talked about women relating to their husbands or the man in the home. We haven't talked about that. We cannot have this conversation and just make it seem as though the important icon in the home is the children, and how you relate to the children and how you raise them is the end all and be all. It is not. At the end of the day, that home is supposed to be, in terms of God's prototype, we're talking God, led by the man. And there are many homes where the man is not allowed to lead. The helpmeet that God gives to some men, and thank God all women are not the same. You have some women in homes that are competing with their husbands or the man in the house. You have some women in homes that, for example, are teaching children to be disrespectful, to be disobedient. The man or the father or the husband gives an instruction and mandate, and the woman opposes it, right? Whether out of her emotions or maybe she wasn't, whether she came up not knowing how to order herself with a man, whatever the reason is. So here's my mother now. So my mom and dad broke up when I was about 2, 3 years old, as I said. And my dad always stayed committed to us. You know, he came every single week. And I'll tell you what, I can tell you, my mom encouraged that relationship. Not once have I ever heard my mom speak badly about my dad. In fact, sometimes when he came to visit, they were not involved, as I said, because they had broken up after 19 years together. And if my mother just finished cooking, my father would get a plate. And we were encouraged as children to respect and to honor that man, even though he was not in the home. We were encouraged to have a good relationship with him. And if he made a mandate from outside as a co-parenting, she would enforce the mandate. Now that I'm a man and I was married, I have grown children, about one teenager and the others are above 20. I can look back and I can tell you that I see that woman, my mother, as a hero in terms of success, extremely successful. Because we talk about success. I don't want to talk about success in a narrow perspective. I want us to look at it why. Success has to do with us not only achieving our mandate under God, but helping the husband that you have as a woman and the children that you have to achieve the mandate. And if a woman, if a little girl does not see you, the mother, respecting her father, how can she learn how to respect her husband when she grows up and get married? You see, we do not recognize the generational implications that are being made every day in homes. And we're talking women today, when women, for example, decide that they are competing with the man, when women decide that they're alone to themselves, when women decide that Jezebel is their best friend and they're going to rebel against everything the man says. So in talking about successful women, we're talking about women that do not go that route and recognize the value of honoring their husband as their head, teaching the children to respect and honor their father, and the list goes on. But I want us to also include, as I said, don't just look at women in terms of children, look at women in terms of the man in the home. How are you ordering yourself? What example are you setting? Is it a good example or a bad example? If it's a bad example, that's not a success. If it's a good example, or shall we say, if it's a God example, add another O, if it's a God example, then you're successful. Things like forgiveness. Are you teaching the way you relate to your husband? Are you teaching your son and daughter how to be forgiven as well? Or are you walking around not speaking to your husband in mouth push-up, making dirty comments? As I said, I'm not bashing, but I want to add the perspective of balance in terms of the yardstick of doing it right or doing it wrong. But I want to include the men, not just the children, in terms of judging women as being successful in this discussion.
All right. Well, I thank you very much, Cornelius, for that view. That I want to add to that, that I would also say that I think if I look back and see who I thought would have been success story as far as a mother is concerned, I would look at my own mother as well, who shared with me in recent years how ecstatic she is that her children have both come to know and own the Lord as Savior. And I think she gave her own metric. You know, she was able to say, this is how I measure my own success. And the fact that uh, between she and my father were able to inculcate that love for God into us, uh, she said that's what she looked at as being successful. However, I would like to bring it back home a little bit. And I'm not going to ask Cornelius to do this one as not being a mother, but Lisa and Michelle, I'd like you to share a story of your own journey that when you got that little pat on the shoulder and you realized God was saying here, yes, yes, you're doing good here. This is a moment that you can afford to be proud of. And this is a moment that you were instrumental in bringing about. Can you share a moment like that from your lives?
Sure. I can, but before I do that, I really I don't want it to seem like we are just moving on from the valid point that Minister Cornelius made, because what I can say is that my husband sets is like the thermostat in our home, and he sets the atmosphere. And it is said that when a woman goes to, well, it's the man that finds a wife, but when the woman decides that she wants to marry a particular man, very often she looks for the qualities, the good qualities that she sees in her father. And I was like, is that true? So I even did my own research and, went back to look at the things that I wanted to find in my husband that was also in my father. And I recognized that my husband had so much qualities that my dad had. And I said, wow, I did not even realize that. So I would agree with you very strongly, Cornelius, that a husband, a father is very significant in our children's life and their well-being and who they eventually turn out to be. So I don't want it to seem like we are just, looking, not even paying attention to the fathers, because their roles are very, very, very vital to our children's life. But to answer your question, Graham, let me start by saying that my husband and I, we waited a very, very long time before we were able to conceive children. And I'd always wanted to be a mother. I always desire to be a mother. And when it was looking like I may not be a mother, I felt very hurt, very disappointed, and, was wondering, Lord, why is it that I'm not? All our friends, everyone around us, those who got married after us, they're having children, and it seems like it's not happening for us. Not recognizing that God had a plan and he had a purpose, and that his timing was the best timing that could have happened to us. Because now I'm hearing everybody talk about, their children going off to college, adults, and I still get the opportunity to enjoy my teenagers, even though my daughter may be going off next year. I still get the opportunity to have them in the home with me. But I can recall there was a time where I was not well. And during that time, I saw my children step up. I've never seen my children pray like the way they prayed for their mother when I wasn't feeling well. I saw them be at my bedside, whatever, mommy, whatever. And normally I would have to say, okay, get up, because my children are athletes. So they're always going, they're always, out having to go to the various lessons. And so they're always going. So they're tired. Even during school, they're still going. And Carlinas know what I'm talking about. So it's always a issue where they're tired. So they didn't get around to cleaning their room, or they can't do this yet, or they can't go here because they're committed to that. And seeing how my children stepped up and they became responsible. And I said to myself, oh, well, my work that and what I have deposited in them, and all the prayer that I've prayed has not been in vain. And more and more, I just see how they're growing into the man and the young man and the young woman of God. Still got a ways to go, but those baby steps, and I just feel so blessed to know that the deposits that their dad and I are making within them, it's not in vain. And sometimes we look for results the wrong times and in the wrong ways, and the results come when we least expect it, because I didn't expect that my children would step up and be so responsible and so caring and so prayerful at that point where I truly needed them to, and without having to do anything. And it really caused me to feel so blessed, and to know that my labor, my discipline, my teaching, my encouraging has not been in vain.
You're modeling as well.
My modeling, correct. Very good.
Yep, you have to show them. What about you, Michelle?
Yes, well, as I said, I am mom to 3 daughters, 26, 22, and 21. And I got married pretty young, got married when I was 20 years old. And 2 years after, my husband and I decided that we would, get pregnant. And so my journey with motherhood began there. But I can agree with Brother Cornelius with his sentiments concerning having a good husband, a man in the home, a godly man in the home. And that has made my job a lot easier. I don't know how I would have done it. I mean, it would have been so difficult to do it just on my own. It is so important for us to find godly men, godly husbands who would father our children. It is so important for us to be intentional as young Christian women, as Christian women on the whole, to be intentional about who we want as partners in life. Because I'm going to tell you this, one of the biggest mistakes anybody can make is to choose the wrong partner, because you are joined together with that person, and it is so important to be joined together in the right way and to the right person. So having chosen the man that I chose, um, having chosen a man who would provide for the children, who himself is a Christian man, who is someone that is in ministry, it made it so much more easy for me as a mom, because he gave space. He set the tone in terms of our spirituality. He set the tone. He was the one who would set down he was the one who was more dominant in terms of the direction that we would go in, the plans for the family, where we want to go, what we want to achieve, the strategy that we're going to apply to achieve it, what we're going to do for these children, how are we going to do it. And of course, by the time they came along, they became the center of our lives. So everything that we did, really, they were at the center of our lives, all of our plans, our future, everything was about child rearing. Of course, we made time for marriage and for building the marriage, but it was something that we did together. It was a joint effort, with full participation. And Cornelius made a very, very valid point when he spoke about two parents pulling against each other. And what I like to call things as they are, and it really is rebellion. And the Bible says that rebellion is like witchcraft. And it's so important not to have that in the family. It is so important to have submission. And by submission, I'm not talking about being subservient. I'm talking about humility and reverence and fear of God first before anything or anybody else. And once the husband has that and he loves the Lord, and the wife, she respects her husband, then you have the perfect synergy, the perfect environment through which our children can grow and thrive and be the best that they can be. It is so important for us to live by example, for us to show kindness, and as you quite rightly said, for us to show forgiveness, for us to show grace to the other person, for us not to condemn the other person and belittle others, our husbands, the wives, the children. It is so important that we don't have those things in the home. We need to weed them out quickly, weed out things like jealousy, weed out things like anger, weed them out, recognize them. We need to be sharp as Christians. We need to be prophetic. We need to be discerning in our families in order to be able to see these things when they present, because I'm telling you, the enemy does not like godly seed. He does not like Christian marriages. He does not like those two, because the marriage is supposed to be a reflection of the relationship between Christ and the church. So once you're married, from the time you get married, a bullseye goes on your back. And when you get those children, the enemy wants those children because they are righteous seed. So we as Christians, husband, wives, must work in synergy so that we can recognize, discern, and be able to weed out the enemy when he comes. It is important that we always find ourselves as a family. This is what I do with my family. I always we huddle and we find ourselves at the foot of the cross. And that is so very important for relationship with each other and in terms of our relationship with God.
All right. Well, definitely uh, a lot to think about there, because you did define your success story in terms of the context of your relationship with your husband as well as with your daughters, and that is definitely something to think of. Uh, Considering that, Cornelius did mention, and you all spoke about young women who are now choosing. What would you, as we wrap things up, what would you say to a young mother a young woman who is not yet a mother, who would like to be, and who has seen some poor examples, who's seen some things that she's like, oh dear, I didn't realize that things could happen like that. And she is concerned. She's worried that she is not going to be enough. She's not going to be able to give what it takes. And because you ladies spoke just now, I'm going to ask Cornelius to start this round. Uh, how would you speak to that young woman who is looking on and saying she isn't sure that she has what it takes? What can she do to prepare herself and to make sure she is on the path to motherhood success?
Well, I'm going to say this very, very slowly. First of all, we have to determine whether that person is a believer or not a believer. But I would say that whether you are a believer or an unbeliever, this is wisdom. Always seek counsel as a young person before you make those steps. The step into marriage is an extremely large one. It can be heaven or it can be hell. It can make you or it can break you. And it is bad enough that when a man and a woman gets married, it is only the man and the woman that it starts with. But then you have these little people called children. And to be honest with you, my heart gets heavy when either man or woman, but we're talking women today, gets into a marriage ill-advised, coming out of their own childhood traumas, and then bring children into that environment. We have a society today when we can see people think that it's only about shooting down people, but it is about the mental health issues that are being manufactured within homes. These are the things that we deal with here at Family Fest, as you know, Graham. And so it's not just about the obvious or the overt things that we see. It is about the poor relationships. It's about the unforgiveness that we see out there. It's about the self-abuse. It's about the illicit abusing of bodies, the suicide attempts. Imagine we have a country where a lot of our young people every day are trying to kill themselves and it doesn't make the newspaper. Where is it coming from? It starts right in the home. And I would want that every woman listening to this particular broadcast think and rethink their position and their purpose within the family. Women are extremely significant. I'm a man saying this, right? Women are, I think, in fact, I wonder if enough women understand how significant they are and the power that God has given them. Not power in a haughty, prideful way, but power to play her role and help the man to be all that he can be in terms of leading, and help children to grow up well adjusted and respectful, both to men and to women. So in other words, what some women don't realize, and I'm gonna say this very, very soberly. What some women don't realize is that they're teaching their sons either to respect women or disrespect women. You're the one setting the tone for your son and how you treat that future wife. You're the one setting the tone for your daughters and how they will treat their husbands. I'm not talking to the men today because I would have my own words for the men. We're talking women today. And I'm saying that I want every woman listening to this to really, as I said, take a rethink and a relook at themselves, an honest one. And don't look at yourself in the mirror of Hollywood or social media. Look at yourself in the mirror of God's words and God's plan for you. And come again. Because a lot is resting on the success of women within the family. A whole lot. So I would say to that young to answer the question, as I said, seek counsel, and I would recommend counsel that is faith-based. I am going to be biased here. I know that we have some unbelievers that might, or non-Christians that might listen to this program. We want to give you the kind of advice that is going to be fundamental and not temporal. And we cannot escape the truth of God's word for men, for women, and children within the family. So seek counsel, preferably counsel that is faith-based. That was my advice, Graham.
Thank you so very much, Cornelius. Pastor Lisa, what about you? What would you have to say to that young lady?
Cornelius wrote some very valid views. And I am going to piggyback on him with respect to the counsel. Wise counsel is very, very vital and important, especially in a society where many people's beliefs or value system is based on social media. However, what they don't realize is that social media only shows you what people want you to see and not the actual life of individuals, what they go through. They show you their success stories, but they don't tell you what it takes or what it took for them to get where they are. And some of them lie as well. So the what is very imperative as you're either seeking to get married or you're having children, however that looks, is to know your purpose as an individual, the calling of God on your life, and the dynamics of bringing a child or, getting married, how you would like that to look. Take it to God in prayer. The first thing I did when I wanted to get married was I went to God and I told the Lord the exact husband that I was looking for. And then when I wanted children, I told the Lord exactly I wanted a boy and a girl. And God has been and continues to be faithful. But we must get the narratives within our heads. We must get it straight and understand that regardless of how good of a parent that we think that we can be, how good of a wife that we think that we can be, that there'll be challenges and there will be ups and there will be downs. Have a good support system. Put God first in everything that you do. You get wise counsel and take a step of faith.
Thank you so very much. We're getting some potent words of wisdom. Michelle King, Minister Michelle King, you wrap
Yes,
us up tonight.
yes. As I said previously, I think the first thing that young woman can do is to choose a good husband. Don't start on your own. You're going to need the support. You're going to need the strength in the home. You're going to need the discipline in the home. You're going to need the rod. And when I say rod, I don't necessarily mean a belt. I'm talking about the presence of your husband. He has a critical role to play. Be careful of who you choose to father your children. I would also say that agree with the other panelists, Cornelius and Lisa, that it is important to seek wise counsel. It is important to get an understanding of what parenthood entails. That is very, very, very critical, because then you get an understanding of what your role really is and what is expected of you in terms of these children and what they need, what provision they need from a mom. I would also say that it's important to get counsel because we want to come into parenting as whole people. It is so difficult to parent children from a place of unhealed wounds. And I see that so often. Sometimes we parent with unhealed wounds. I parented my first daughter. I think that she would have been the one, because she was the first. I parented with a lot of fear because I didn't want my daughter. I saw so many things going wrong. So I was kind of overprotective of her. So I parented from fear, and sometimes I got angry and I you make decisions, you say things that, but I didn't really speak a lot of things that were off-putting, but I was overly protective of her. And as what I said, we need to give ourselves grace because we're not perfect people. And as moms, we make mistakes as well. But as I was saying, it's so important to parent from a place of healing. It is important also to have a strong identity, to know who you are. And that ties right into having that strong identity, knowing who you are, knowing whose you are, being able to be an example to this young woman or young man as who you ought to be as a Christian, being able to lead them. So those are things that are critically important to a young mother seeking as much information, as I said, as possible, because it's so important to try to get as much information as you can, because I'm telling you, there's no amount of information that's going to prepare you. So the best thing to do is to get as much information as you possibly can, because when you walk on that path, I'm telling you, there are things that are going to come at you that are going to be absolutely out of your thoughts. There are some things that you may have to deal with that you didn't know how to deal with them, and you're going to have to seek counsel again. And I'm saying that because throughout your journey as a parent, you don't just seek information at the beginning, but throughout your journey as a parent, you will always have to seek information. You will always have to seek counsel, especially when you have multiple children. Each one is different. The strategy that you use for one, you can't use for the other, because you will get a completely different result. And I'll give you an example. As I said, I have 3 girls, but I have one daughter who is quite introverted. They're all three of them are introverts, but there's one daughter that is extremely introverted. And so the discipline that I used for the first one, I couldn't use for her, because that was not punishment for her. That was heaven for her. So for the first one, if she was disobedient, I would discipline her. This is when they were small, I would say to her, go to your room. And that was torment for her, because she didn't want to be alone. But the second daughter, if I ever tell her, go to your room, that was heaven
Be
for
happy.
her, because she loved that. She loved being alone. So I had to find a different way to punish her, to discipline her rather, because that would have
Mm.
been glorious for her. And I recognized that when I sent her to the room, and I peeped back at her, and I saw the girl in the bedroom with her eyes going from one place to the next. Her thoughts were keeping her company. She was just in heaven by herself. So I had to find a different way to deal with her, as opposed to the first one, who loved the company at the time, because she was probably 6, 7 or so. And for her, being alone was torment. But for the second one, so it was heaven for her. So I had to find a different method to deal with her. But as I said, to wrap up, we need to seek counseling, have a strong identity, have some good healing. Do not
Mm.
parent from our wounds. Choose a good partner. And most of all, keep ourselves in deep prayer, supplication, be discerning, be prophetic to our children, speak the word of God over them, and expect that the word of God is going to manifest in and through them, because that's what we really want as the end result. Thank
Definitely. I thank you so very much, all of you. I want to just say quickly to both Minister Michelle and Pastor Lisa that I thank you for sharing. And I'm not sure that you realize that you held yourselves up as motherhood success stories as well. In this context, in that you both acknowledged that you changed along the way the methods that you used. You saw what worked and didn't work, and you were able to adjust and adapt and change the way you did because you saw this is what I need to do. And I think at the end of the day, that is the real success story. Anyone who's able to look at where they are and change what they're doing to bring about a better result than they were seeing before. It is said that insanity is doing the same thing every time and expecting a different result. Y'all are not insane. I can definitely say that and encourage you all with that. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you
you.
for watching this evening,
Thank
Family
you.
Fest. And we continue Next week, we're getting into the influence on the children. Children's Week starts on Sunday. Join us at 5:30 p.m. on Sunday the 19th for the next discussion. Until then, I'm Graham Vaughn. Do have a blessed night. And mothers, keep listening to God, and He will counsel you into success.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping the parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.